Well, I want to welcome you today to a very exciting podcast with the CFO or former CFO of the state of Florida, candidate for Congress, only Trump endorsed candidate for Congress, a native of the Panhandle of Florida, or from the Panhandle of Florida. Like myself, we are Floridians, and we're up here we're biased, but the most special part of our state, or at least we think so. And I want you to welcome Jimmy Patronis today, and we're going to get some incredible stuff. Mr. Patronis, thank you so much for your time in talking with us today.
Sure, Ben. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I tell people all the time, Florida isn't one state. We're about 5 different countries, and I've traveled every inch of this state a couple hundred times over. And let me tell you, the rest of the state doesn't even know the Central Time Zone exists. So yeah, we're sometimes forgotten about, but I'm very proud to call myself a native of Northwest Florida, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm very excited. People outside of Florida too get really confused. They think we're close to like Miami, and it's a bit of a drive from here, as you know.
100%.
We can cut this out, but I'll tell you the story. There was an NBA player that gave us tickets one time to see the Orlando Magic, and gave it to us like day of, and it was like 7 hours. Like, we can't make it in time. Wish you would have told us sooner, right? So,
Right.
okay, I wrote some questions down because I want to be prepared. And I do want to thank you in the middle of a busy campaign. I'm honored that you take time to talk with us. And I hope that a lot of our viewers who don't live in the state of Florida can just really kind of understand what it's like to run for Congress and what you're thinking here. But as well, many people that do live here, there may be some questions that help them understand who to choose. And I would add this, there are some good people in this race. They're not evil
That's
people
right.
in this race. But man, there's a reason why President Trump endorsed Jimmy Patronis, and I'm really excited to be talking with you. And I feel like things are kind of in your corner with who's next. But I'd be curious. I think a lot of people are. Why run for Congress? I mean, like, there's other things to do. That's a tough. It is a tough thing to run. It's a tough thing to be a public servant. I mean, people don't realize, like, people are always critical. I mean, why even run? And I'd love to hear your answer.
Sure. So, one, thanks for having me. But I'm hardwired to be a public servant. My family's been in the restaurant business for 30 years, and we've always just known taking care of the customer is how you make a living, how you take care of your family. And so it's kind of funny. It goes back to my dad and uncle. My dad and uncle started off with literally rubbing a couple nickels together to get into the restaurant business.
Wow.
And, patronizing somebody's business is, to me, one of the greatest forms of flattery you can have.
Yeah.
And as you try to look at how competitive the restaurant business is, people go anywhere for their birthday, their anniversary, that special occasion. And up in Northwest Florida, because how seasonal things are and how busy the summer gets, there's not a lot of, at least at one time, there was no chain restaurants. It's all independent restaurants, and they were all family owned and operated. Still, a lot of them are left. But it was so humbling to me that we would have folks that would come, break bread with their family on those special occasions, and want to be with our family. So I was always just ever grateful for that opportunity to serve those citizens. So as incredibly good things happen to my family, we've done a lot of things over the years to return favor back to
Yeah.
those that have been so good to us. It's just something that nourishes my soul to be able to be a public servant. I ran for the state legislature, served 8 years there. After 8 years, term limits in Florida, I was going to go home, be part of back to the family restaurant business. And then a guy named Rick Scott just really took an interest in me. Now he's Senator Rick Scott, and asked me to be on the Public Service Commission. I served there after my wife gave me permission. And then it happened again when the opportunity to go and serve on the Florida cabinet as CFO. Again, it's a family decision. My wife said, Jimmy, I'm good with it. So we went off, and we've been serving the citizens of the state of Florida for the last 8 years. And who would have thought that on November 26th, I'd get a phone call, President Trump saying, Jimmy, if you'll run for Congress, then I'll support you. And you're the type of guy that we want there. And how do you tell the guy no? And how do you not see that as a sign from God or from somebody that's really feeling like, you're the right person for the
Yeah.
job? And what a time in our lives, a time in our country, just coming off of an election that just sent the tone and message that it's time to put American families first
Yeah.
and just try to stop some of the craziness that we have seen that has poisoned so many families, so many communities, so many businesses. And so that was my inspiration. I feel like it was a little bit of a calling, and I think when you have an opportunity to serve your fellow man, and more importantly, leave this place in a better place for your own kids, to me, sign me up. I'm all in.
Yeah. Man, Congress has that backwards. We need that attitude there
Mm-hmm.
that the American people are the patrons, not the other way around. We're
100%.
and Congress has that backwards. So we need more of that up on the Hill. So thank you for saying that. What is
Sure.
one of the biggest issues or threats, maybe challenges? And you use the term threat, you think military, you use the term issue, you think maybe social things. But I kind of put them all together to kind of let you talk about this. What do you think is some of the biggest issues, threats, challenges facing our nation right now? When you look at that, like, man, this is something we have to address.
Well, I think that the poison that got into our systems, that we saw things being exploited through ESG and some of these other forms of where we're allowing men to play in female sports. And this was taking our country down a path that does not make for stronger families. So I do appreciate that, that corporate America, where they weighed in on those issues, have started to dismantle their ESG programs. They're starting to walk it back. And, it took an election of this magnitude where President Trump won the popular vote and electoral vote, and they know that they're going to be dealing with him for the next 4 years. But they also know, they saw that, again, the same person I was talking about a few minutes ago, the customer's not happy. Okay.
Yeah.
The customer has spoken, and the customer wants change. The customer does not want inflation anymore. The customer wants $2.40 a gallon gas again. The customer wants lower interest rates. They want to be able to have their homes affordable. And Washington has totally disregarded the customer. So, I think one is we do have a social poison that got into our system that I think, I'm looking forward to be part of seeing that stuff locked up, buried, and never rear its ugly head again. But then as we talk about one of our biggest vulnerabilities, it's our debt. It's 100% our debt. Our debt
Yeah.
makes us vulnerable in so many different ways. It's a vulnerability when it comes to national defense. It's a vulnerability when it comes to taking care of our seniors. It's a vulnerability when it comes to taking care of our veterans and our military. So,
Yep.
people question, well, how do you start? You start by cutting. You start by being more efficient. And, I
Yep.
look what we've done in the state of Florida. And I do believe that there's things that we have done in the state of Florida. We're in the best fiscal health we've ever been in the history of the state. That's not an accident. It's not a sprint. It's a march. You have to have discipline, and you have to do it every single day. And hopefully we can bring some of that passion and some of that discipline to Washington, D.C.
When someone is thinking about a decision as to who I'm going to vote for, I think it's key to understand the difference in experience. So if you're an experienced politician that's experienced at destroying our nation,
Yeah,
that's not the kind of experience we want. But when you look at the state of Florida, and there's a reason why President Trump has been dipping into the pool here,
hmm
it's because here's a guy that's been in the legislature for 8 years, that served on commissions, that served as a CFO. Well, let's see, how good is the state of Florida? Where are they at? And, obviously there's always room to grow, right? You always want to
yeah,
get better. But, look at the hell. I mean, Florida's where you want to be. And even in the heat of summer, I'd rather deal with the heat than than the mess that exists out in California or somewhere else. And so I think that's key. And your experience is really, it's manifested into a lot of good things. And just as a Floridian, I do want to say thank you. And
sure.
man, I also agree. Like the debt coming from a CFO is something I think that is off the radar of a lot. We haven't talked much about it, and that is a good point. That is solid.
And look, and it's not a point that somebody's going to talk around the supper table with their wife and kids. And it's, they want to talk about their family. They want to talk
Right.
about what brings joy to them. And cutting the budget is not a fun thing to do, but it's definitely what we've got to do. And we're not going to fix it overnight. You've got to continue to take incremental steps. Hopefully, some years will be better than other years, but you've got to get some consistency and some
Yep.
predictability, just like what every household family must do every single
Yep.
month. And sometimes it's every single week, depending on how their household budget is set, and try to live within our means. And we're not doing that in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of next steps, you said that, obviously the budget, but do you have a few agendas in Washington, like one or two things that are kind of top of your priority to try and see done when you're there?
Sure. So I think one is where we have gotten very engaged. Some things that we have proposed are federal legislation. I'm not a member of Congress nor a United States senator, so I try to engage those members of Congress in the United States Senate who I have alliances with. Senator Scott's is a good one, where we try to get legislative ideas of how we can leverage Florida law and help our citizens with federal law. So
Yep.
one is and I'll try to give you a quick synopsis, but it's called the READY Act. It's some legislation that we've drafted. Congresswoman Laurel Lee out of Tampa has actually filed the bill. We gave her a quote this week to run with it. So she's jumped on the issue. Senator Scott's jumped on the issue. So just like you would set up a health savings account, a lot of folks know what those are. You're able to put pre-tax dollars from your paycheck into an account that bears interest, and you can use it to offset your medical expenses, co-pays, prescriptions, you name it. So I said, don't reinvent the wheel. We took that exact same framework and we call it a READY Act, and it's for your home. So you can put pre-tax dollars in the savings account to replace your roof, replace an air handler, replace your windows with impact windows and doors. The great thing about it is all those issues right there I just spoke to, under Florida law, forces discounts on your insurance premium. So now I'm giving the homeowner incentive to put money aside pre-tax. There's the federal advantage, and then allow it at a state level to drive down your insurance costs and rates. Ultimately, that then gives a solution to making homes more affordable. I think that one of the best forces for good is home ownership. When somebody owns a home, that means they're going to show up to work. They're going to become part of their community. Strong families build strong communities. And so there goes the opportunity to build a good family.
I love that. Does the READY Act stipulate your primary residence, or does it extend out to rental properties as well?
So right now we would be focused on just primary residences. But
Makes sense.
if it's successful, I mean, why not go further? I mean, if you're giving that individual the incentive, and look, and we would cap it, we wouldn't make it any type of a boondoggle. We'd say, you could put up to $5,000 a year into this account. But the good thing about it is say if you're an insurance company and now you're shopping for insurance for your home, and you've got a ready account in hand, that insurance company is going to probably find you as an attractive homeowner, potential home policy owner that they want to have, because it's obvious you've got discipline, you're saving money, you put money aside to harden your home. They know that you're going to be somebody who is going to want to take care of that home. And it is what it is in life. You have a first place and a last place and everything. We want to make sure that we have, people that are responsible in communities. And now this is where the federal government is incentivizing them to put money aside in order to protect their single biggest investment they'll ever make in their entire life, and that's their primary residence.
Yeah, I really love it. It's such a good idea because it works well with home savings. Why not apply it to other things? What a good call. That's called the READY Act.
Yep. And I think in the case
evidently
of
you're
Laurel
for
Lee,
it. I love it.
yeah. So and I think Laurel Lee's actually put it in a larger, more comprehensive package. But that was the version of it. And like I said, we went and stole existing language off the shelf that dealt with the Home Health Savings Account Act, and not try to resell a whole new concept to the bureaucrats and those that would have jurisdiction over any of the implementation of this.
Well, let's get to some things that may be interesting for our audience, because we talk a lot about this. So here's a question for you. Should people of faith have a voice in government, or should they be investigated by the FBI, censored by big tech, and sidelined from public life?
I think this past election hit a reset button with a lot of that, which made me feel better. We had a sitting president of the United States who was banned off of all these social media platforms. And that was so troubling to me in a state, in a country that we pride ourselves of freedom of speech. I mean, it was heavy handed of government. And now that it's all become into light, it's been exposed. And look, I don't know what your politics are with Elon Musk, but Elon Musk bought Twitter, probably lost a fortune off of it. But what he did is he stopped the madness. And and I appreciate what he did was to force others like Mark Zuckerberg to start changing their tune on how they police free speech and public speech on their platforms. So again, I think those guys probably aren't sleeping as well at night, which serves them right. What they allowed big government to push them around, but this is also how bad of a police state we had gotten into with the Biden administration and how these inmates were running the institution. Brighter days are ahead starting January the 20th.
Yeah, thank you for referencing the censorship and the need for it to end. And you asked about Elon Musk. I'm a big Elon Musk fan. I think we both have Teslas, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you tell people you own it.
I do, but I didn't use any tax breaks to buy mine. So it's one of those things. Yeah, I love technology. I'm a nerd. I know you're a nerd. I've seen your studio set up, and I know this. When my wife drives the car or I drive the car, it's a very safe automobile. I feel like somebody's looking out for me when I'm driving. And you know what? Sometimes I have precious cargo named Theo and Johnny in the car with me. So I just like that extra peace of mind that somebody's helping me make sure I don't make a mistake.
Not to go too far out of the way, but one thing people have no idea about is full self-driving. Like have you experienced that in your Tesla yet?
I have.
Do you have full self-drive? I bought it on mine.
Yeah, so I've gotten where they've done the testing of it. But here's a crazy thing. I've got a good friend of mine. It was so funny. He started off with a Chick-fil-A franchise, so he's religious himself. He loved the fact that Chick-fil-A's were closed on Sunday, so that's why he got involved with it. But now he's older in age. He's about 80. And I walk out, he's at an event for me, and walk outside and I'm putting him in his car. He's got a Tesla Model X. It's just gorgeous. And he gets in the car. He says, "Yeah, Jimmy," he said, "I love it." He says, "The only way I get around is I get in the car and just say, 'Drive me home.'" And I'm thinking, you know what? Wow. So here's somebody who probably feels they may not have as much confidence driving at night as they once did, but now this car is empowering them to be able to be around their family, their friends, their church, the grocery store, because it is as a driving assistant to them. So you know what? Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I have eye issues. That's why I bought the car. So
there you go.
The exact same reason, just for the ability to have the car drive you. And what I guess what I'm saying is, like, if you've never experienced it, you don't really like this car does all the drive. It's not like, oh, you gotta it just drives you. It's crazy. Yeah. It's insane. Like, people haven't experienced it. So sorry,
it'll fuss at you if you don't pay attention to it too.
Yeah, no, you do. You have to keep your eyes on the road, but you don't have to touch the wheel. Like, the gas, the wheel just does it. It's wild. It's just, right. It's something to experience. I remember the first time I did, and most people don't realize that the technology is actually that advanced.
Yeah,
if you've never experienced it. Okay, so sorry to shift gears a little bit.
Yep, go ahead.
But a lot of the people that watch us really, we care about who Jesus is and that person. And I'd be curious if someone asked you, Mr. Patronis, who is Jesus to you? What would you say?
Well, Jesus is my Savior. And I do think that there's different times in our life that you realize how much he has affected your life. And unfortunately, some of the times I think that you really appreciate what Christ has sacrificed is the hardships we face in our life or the loss of a loved one. And sometimes I think you need that reality check to remind yourself that, when you had a difficult time, that you didn't do this by yourself. You did this because, an act of God. And it's no different. I told the group last night we were in Escambia County for a forum, and actually it was the day before when I was in Walton County for a forum, and I talked about President Trump. I said it's only by an act of God this guy's still alive. And if you don't believe it, then you don't know what God is. I mean, for him, I mean, he should be dead right now. And there's so many others that did not have the ability to be safe from that assassin's bullets. And I'm a big believer that where I am today with my family, my children, my life, my successes, my failures, which you learn from your failures, is only because I have God in my heart.
Yeah, yeah. Jesus is our Savior. He
Yeah, that's
died
right.
on the cross. He rose again. And yes, you're right. I do think it's important to acknowledge the hand of God. Here's one. I don't know. But we were planning. We have tickets. We were planning to go to the inauguration. Now we're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like rethinking all of that because it's inside. But I will say there's a little bit of a concern in my mind, and it just even wonder. It even makes you wonder if the Lord changed the weather so the thing would happen inside. Like, who knows what evil was planned. I don't like this, speculate too much, but it is interesting. I don't know if the inauguration was moved
Mm-hmm.
indoors. Yeah. Sorry, that's very breaking news. We're breaking it all here. The inauguration indoors.
But it's, in all seriousness, I read the president's post on that, and it's going to be single digit weather.
Yeah.
And I think all you have to do is look at the turnout from this past election and how many people want to see history being made. And
Yeah.
some of
Oh
those
yeah.
people, I'm sorry, they have no business being outside in single digit weather. My mother she would be there in a heartbeat. She's 89 years old. She has no business being out in single digit weather.
That.
So I
Yeah.
think that's the president and his team, out of abundance of caution, just encourage people. You won't have enough first responders to manage what could you have with people falling out, security, traffic. I hate it
It's the
for
right.
him.
It's a bummer, but it's the right decision. It really is.
It is.
I guess my
And
point is,
knowing this
is who
guy, he's
knows
going to
what was
celebrate
planned
another
by
day.
evil.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I
So
know.
what?
I
I've
hear
got.
you.
I've one more.
Yeah.
Here's one that I just felt was like general,
Okay.
and I think it's good to think about. So when you go to the polls to vote, I think we have taken that so casually. Men
Mm-hmm.
have died so that we could have this freedom. And I think some people just don't, who cares, don't vote. And I mean, as you know, in these special elections, the primary, the turnout tends to be low. But would as someone that is a public servant, there was a young person that you were going to say, and I think it's a good refresher for all of us. What do I need to be thinking about when I go to the polls? I'm making a decision about a candidate, and of course, you're helping people go, hey, if you allow me, I'll serve your district right now. But what do people need to think about when they think about the candidates that they choose for office? What are some things that maybe could help us as we think through that?
Sure. So I remind people all the time, if you don't hold your electeds accountable, you get the government you deserve.
Mm.
So, and I ask people when I'm meeting with a group, I said, the single most valuable, powerful tool you've got available in every election cycle is your vote. And if you don't exercise it, if you don't use it, then you're allowing somebody else's vote to control the trajectory of our country, your local government, your county commission, your school board. So please be engaged, care,
Yeah.
do your homework. I met with a young man today, and it's obvious he's interested in being more politically active. And I told him, I said, get to know the candidates. And I said,
Yeah.
you don't want to know the candidates after they're elected. If you really want to know what the candidates are all about, go meet with them as they're campaigning. Ask them the tough questions. Put them on the spot. This is why, I tell people, you can email me at jimmy@joinjimmy.com. It goes straight to my phone. I want to hear from you. I want to be engaged. I'm very active on X, and Facebook is a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but usually X is my go-to, and I've got my direct messages open. People can reach me on there, but I want to hear from people. But at the same time, I want to help them. I tell them sometimes I'm a state official. Sometimes I'm a local official, sometimes I'm a federal official, but people know that Jimmy's involved in government. So I get a lot of outreach on any of a number of issues. And if you don't want to be in public service, then don't put your name on the ballot. Don't ask for it. And it disheartens me sometimes when you see elected officials that you never see in public. And so, if you're not going to want to serve the public, don't even do it. Don't waste your people's time. Go be up there and be a fighter for them to make sure they know this is what you stand for and this is what I want to take to whatever elected office I'm going to hold. And I told you when we met the first time, I think I told y'all, granted, he always used to say, lose an eye because you got a second one, but never lose your name because it's the only one you're going to get. And so I'm very proud of my dad and my uncle and their sacrifice. And I'm going to continue to hold that type of honor to make the people of Congressional District 1 proud of what we can do together in Washington, D.C. I'm a big believer, and I'm going to close with this. I can talk forever, but the people of CD1 spend their money better than Washington does. I've always said when I was the CFO of the state, the citizens of the state of Florida spend their money better than Tallahassee does.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I know you have to get going. It's a busy schedule. I've worked on campaigns before, and I know it's like one right after the other. So we are very honored that you would take the time to talk with us. And I hope that this can be, just another side of Mr. Jimmy Patronis, our state CFO. Thank you for serving the state of Florida. I'm looking at my calendar. The end of April, I am going to be speaking at the Museum of the Bible, which is just a few blocks from Capitol Hill. So assuming that this election goes your direction, which we think that it will, I want to meet up. I hope we can connect there in Washington. I was like, oh man, he'll be there by then. So hopefully we can drop by and say hello. But thank you for what you've already done. Thank you for taking this on, because I know you're the one candidate that I don't think was even planning to do any of this. But when President Trump calls you and says, "Hey, I think you'd be the guy," for you to say, "All right," you're the CFO of the state of Florida to come and be our congressman. We're honored, and we got to get out and vote for you. But thank you so much. You're very kind.
Well, that's so funny, but I think it's a lot of this stuff is fate. That I feel like there's really good people that have been put in my path in order to better myself. And it's no different. I just appreciate you commenting on X that one day and you responding to my direct message, and you know what? I've got a friend out of this, and I feel like this will be a friend for a very long time. And I look forward to seeing you in April, hopefully in Washington, D.C. And I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Truly our privilege. We'll hope you'll come back on in the future. Thank you so much. Election day is, remind me, because I'm going to do early.
So early voting starts on January the 18th. Some people are already getting their absentee ballots in the mail, and then the primary election is the 28th of January, and then the general election, it's no joke, it's April Fool's Day.
Yeah, well, it's April 1st. Strange. Okay. Thank you again, and please let us know how we can support you. Thank you so much.
Take care. See ya.